Now for the keynote speaker. Sarah Weston has worked in secondary education for 18 years as a teacher, administrator, and curriculum designer. She's a graduate of Brigham Young University, holding a BA in math education, and earned her master's in education from Western Governors University. She has built 17 semester courses using open educational resources and currently oversees all course development and teacher training on building with OER. Sarah was awarded the Utah Charter Educator of the Year in 2010, the first online educator to receive the award. Mountain Heights Academy was also privileged to be awarded in 2011, 2013, 2014, 2016, 2017, Best of State in Curriculum Development. In 2015, Mountain Heights won the Open Education Excellence Award for Outstanding Site and Outstanding Courses. And in 2018, Sarah was awarded the OE Global Award for Open Pedagogy. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Sarah Weston. I should have had you put this on before. You want to wear this?
I'll just use that one.
All right.
Make it easier.
Okay. Thank you.
By the way, I don't know any of you, and I don't have a car, so I am going to need a ride to lunch today. So someone be my friend, please. Let me get myself switched over. And hopefully I won't walk too far away from this mic. You know how hard it is not to walk away from a mic when you're used to just walking. So anyway, I'm a loudspeaker anyway. You can hear me out here, right? Okay, so anyway, I'll go back and forth. So you were able to learn a couple things about me in that intro, but it's a little bit dry. But not Josh's fault. Like, he said, give me your bio, and I just pull it off the website because it's the easiest place to do. I probably should write like a more exciting one. But I thought I would tell you, since I am here in Iowa, and I guess those of you guys are in Nebraska, I'm on video, right? I would tell you a little bit about myself and maybe why I was kind of excited to come out here to Iowa. I haven't been here before, but I have a history that goes back to this place, actually Council Bluffs exactly. So I have two ties to this area that I wanted to tell you about. So the first one is this lady right here. My ancestors came through this exact area back in 1856. I had to look it up. And some key events took place here, right here in Council Bluffs, that shaped their lives, and also mine, being the descendant of them. So this lady right here, her name is Jane Elizabeth Parkinson. And she is my great-great-great-grandmother. When Jane was 11 years old, her family crossed the plains with the ill-fated Martin Handcart Company. So this was a group of people trekking west that didn't have the money to outfit themselves in a full wagon, and so they would pull hand carts across the plains. Now, as much as we think of how terrible, we hear these stories of these people coming across the Oregon Trail, really the mortality rate was pretty low if you go and do the research, except for a few groups of people. And this lady happened to be in one of those ill-fated groups. She was with a handcart company that didn't fare too well. They left too late in the season and got caught in snows, and so they had a lot of trials and a lot of people that died during this thing. So when her group, by the way, she was 11 years old when she was traveling with her family. When they got here to Council Bluffs, her oldest brother Samuel decided he had enough of this hiking west business, and so he left the family at that point. But what he didn't know was shortly after that, Jane's mother, her father, and her two other siblings all died of an illness, leaving Jane at 11 years old in charge of her three younger siblings, and she had to get them west. Now, miraculously, she did so, and she continued to travel with this company and did that. Her little company that she was with, they got caught in the snows, and they got caught in... There was a point where they were just stranded, and they were by the Platte River in Wyoming, and they were exhausted, and they were freezing, and they were out of all food. And there was a rescue company that came out and got them, which actually was able to take her little family, what was left of her family, and bring her out west. I named one of my daughters Jane. Because of these stories. I grew up hearing this story about Jane Elizabeth Parkinson and her ties to this area right here. And I think those experiences happened right here in Iowa and Nebraska, and as she crossed these plains, helped cement the strength that she needed and kind of left the legacy that I have been hearing about for years. Now, my second tie to this area is doesn't take place in 1856 like the other one. It takes place in the early 1980s. So I am from the Northwest. Specifically, I'm from Portland, Oregon. And you have no idea how much we learn about Lewis and Clark and the Oregon Trail. Every year I learned about it, tons about it. It's like the focus of half my education, I feel like, or at least the part that I remembered in grade school. And but this was the handcart trick right here. Here we go, Oregon Trail. Now I'm to my little 64-bit here. So as you probably already know, this town was actually named by Lewis and Clark. I mean, where they literally met with tribe elders on the bluffs, and they counseled with them, which is why it was named Council Bluffs. And I learned that growing up in Oregon because we learned all about this stuff. My favorite extension activity what we were able to do was what this picture is right here, playing Oregon Trail on the Apple IIes that we had in our classroom. And so when I thought of coming to Council Bluffs, I immediately thought of Jane Parkinson, which I knew about, but then I also had this flashback to playing these games on the Oregon Trail where you always killed more buffalo than you could cure or carry, and then you died of dysentery anyway. But this was also one of my, I know you can't see it very well, but do you remember this? Come on, I mean, someone's got to be my age, where you had to, like, you're playing the game and then it told you to flip the disc. And push spacebar to continue. So anyway, when I was coming to Iowa, honestly, I'm like, these are the things that crossed my mind. And I wanted to just share a couple stories from my history. And then I'm going to actually tell you another history story, too. And I'm going to move to a little more present day and talk to you about the history of OER, which is why you're here today. So I consider OER to be a superhero. And it is a superhero in education, both K-12 and also post-secondary. And the one thing that we do know about superheroes, because we see all those movies that come out over and over and over again, is that all superheroes have an origin story. A story where we learn about how they receive their extraordinary abilities and their mandate for the greater good. And OER is no different. And there are a few key players that play a part in OER's origin story, and I'm going to share them with you. So, there's my superheroes. This guy right here, I'm taking you back to 1994. So 1856 to 1983 to 1994. I'm moving you forward in time, at least in history. So in OER, I'm going to start you out in the 1990s. It doesn't go back any farther than that, really. Maybe the idea of it, but the reality of it started about 1994. So this guy is Wayne Hodgins, and he coined the term learning object back in 1994. That term didn't exist anywhere, okay? So he made up that term. And that term quickly entered the vocabulary of educators and instructional designers, and it's been everywhere since then, which is why that's not a new term to you, because you feel like it's been around forever. The idea behind learning object was that digital materials could be designed and produced so that they could be reused easily in various formats. That was this revolutionary idea that Wayne put forward back then. And I'm going to speak in 1994 terms because I know this still wouldn't make sense in today's thing, but this idea was revolutionary. It was like finding out that when you were sitting in the dentist's office reading through those magazines and you found an article that you liked, rather than you could just rip that article out and walk out the door rather than having to steal the whole magazine and take it with you. Now, nowadays, of course, we would just take a picture with our phone of an article that we wanted. But again, if you think about it, that's still revolutionary. The fact that you can take just a snapshot of a piece of instruction or content that you want and make it portable and take it with you, whether it's a picture or if it's tearing out a page, that idea didn't exist back then. And that was what Wayne came up with. Then in 1998, we had this guy right here named David Wiley. David is a friend of mine, but I did not know him in 1998. I didn't meet him until about a decade later. But David was doing stuff in 1998 while I was teaching math at high school, and he was coming up with this revolutionary stuff in OER. So he came along, and he also coined a term. He coined a term, open content. I want to coin a term, so I can have a slide with my name on it. Actually, no, wait. Okay, I actually did, I didn't really coin the whole term. Come to my session. I actually did come up with something that I use. Anyway, So David came up with this term called open content, and the term was targeted for educators, but it was quickly picked up for the internet by the internet people in general. And you think about where the internet was in 1998. Think back. Okay, I know. Okay, 1998. 1998 was still the year that I was going from free to free dial-up services, like whoever sent you the discs in the mail. I had moved beyond AOL. I was too cool for that. But like I still was trying to find anything that cost me was free or less than $10 a month to do the dial-up where I was at. You guys maybe had better internet. I was living in Salt Lake City at the time. Then, and 1999 was the year that I decided that I was going to keep internet like continuously. Like I was going to commit. Like it became a utility I was willing to pay for. And I do remember this because oddly enough, it was 1999. It was, and this is not a happy memory, but I remember keeping the internet because the Columbine tragedy happened right at that time. And at that point, I'm like, I want to keep up on news and I want to know what's happening. And so that's when I decided to keep the internet in my house and keep subscribed to the internet. And that's why that year is burned in my brain. So probably you guys were all about the same point with me as far as our internet access back in 1988, 1999. So there was, during this time period, there was this huge, relative, free software movement that was going on, open source free software movement. It was kind of underground at the time, and there's some really cool history stuff that goes into it, but doesn't really apply here. But if you know anything about that time, there was some cool stuff that was going on. And that idea of open content was readily adopted by this group of, I'm going to call them kind of subversive. They were kind of subversive people doing this. And it led to the creation of what it was the first widely adopted open license for open content. And I would bet that unless any of you have met me before and you've had this talk with me, that you've never heard of this licensing before. David came up with it. It was called the Open Publication License. And there is a reason why you haven't heard of it, because just 2 years later, this guy came along with a few others. His name is Larry Lessig. And he, with a few others, created the Creative Commons. The Creative Commons. So that didn't exist until the year 2000. And what the Creative Commons did, this group of people, as they got together to do this, it played a huge role in this idea of open content because it took this confusing licensing structure that David had put together. David's great and he's done lots of things, but that open publication license was a little confusing. Creative Commons made it, and it gave this very accessible, understandable, usable set of licenses to people, to educators, to anyone, so that they were able to openly license their content in a way that everyone understood what it meant, and they understood how to use it. And that did not exist before the year 2000. That's kind of amazing. So then, in 2001, we had a monumental thing happen. MIT decided it was going to release all of its courses and materials that it had available online under a Creative Commons license. This was huge. Number one, it came from a school, MIT, that doing something like this got this idea of OER, open educational materials. Actually, the word OER didn't exist yet. I'll get to that in a minute. This idea of openly licensing content suddenly got in the news. MIT did this? What is this? And people started talking about it. It was an instant shot of cred for open content and open licensing. And it was a big deal this happened. I liken it to OER getting asked to the prom by the football captain, okay? So this was a big deal that MIT did this. Then in 2002, this group of people, UNESCO, whenever I talk about UNESCO, I see if anyone knows what UNESCO stands for. Does anyone know what it stands for without Googling? I didn't either. I have to write it down every time. So I'm going to read it. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. There's a mouthful for you. This particular building, this is not a good shot of it, but this particular building is found in Paris, and it's really cool. It's like it's like shaped like an X, and it's this architectural building. If you ever have a chance to see it, the picture does not do it justice. So this group of people, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, it was about as lofty as a group as that name sounds like. They got together in 2002. And they held a forum where a bunch of really, really smart people do what really, really smart people do. They get in a room and they talk. Hopefully they actually take action, but really they just got in a room and they talked. And they came up with a goal. I'm going to call it actually a dream. They came up with this dream, and this is what they said. Their dream was to develop together a universal educational resource available for the whole of humanity. That's pretty lofty. I'm going to repeat that. To develop together a universal educational resource available for the whole of humanity. Okay, that is pretty lofty. And what they did is they chose the term open educational resource to describe their efforts. And thus, we had the birth of our superhero right there. That is where the term OER came into existence. And now you have heard all about it for all these years, but it didn't even exist to 2002. So hopefully that was new information for you. Then we reached 2003 to 2013. These are the toddler and awkward tween years of OER. And they really were. If you were involved or you knew much about OER between this time, and by the way, you'll find out when I fall into this timeline, I'm not even in this timeline until about 2009. I didn't even know about OER back then. But this 2003 to 2013 was a time of both, it started out with scarcity at the beginning. In 2003, very little OER, to where we get to 2013, where there is just a glut of OER everywhere. In fact, repositories have been popping up here and there, and especially between about 2009 and 2013. People were slapping anything up on the internet and setting up all of these random OER repositories, and it was this time period was both amazing and really awkward, as anybody between those ages would have been. And OER had to grow up too. That's what it was doing. It was a really interesting time to be able to work on OER. And then we hit, and by the way, I'm giving you the history of OER for K-12. There are lots of other key points that happen for post-secondary OER, but I'm not in post-secondary, and neither are you guys. So just so you know, you're like, wait, something happened here. I'm skipping that over because I'm worrying about how it affects us in K-12. So then in 2014, the K-12 OER Collaborative was formed. So this was announced in November of 2014 at the Open Educational Conference that was held in Washington, D.C. I was at that particular conference, and it was really exciting because at that point they were going to put out these RFPs for people to develop this full package OER curriculum for ELA and mathematics for grades K through 12. And we had been doing it, my school does a lot of curriculum development, and so people were all like looking over at us, are you going to submit for this RFP? And honestly, what they were looking for is outside the scope that I'm able to do. And so I remember, the reason I remember that meeting is because I felt a lot of pressure. Like people were like, Mountain Heights Academy, what are you going to do? I'll tell you a little bit about my school in a minute. And I was like, I'm sitting this one out. This one's beyond my scope. What they were looking for was really the equivalent of what publishers put out there. If your school goes out and buys a full Pearson package or something like that, that's what they were looking for with these RFP for this curriculum. But I was, even though I was not in a position, nor was I really willing to want to get involved in something that, like that, I supported it, and I was super excited to see what was going to come out of it. And it was kind of messy for a while. Like, it was interesting to see what was going to happen, but it got sort of narrowed down. And what eventually came out of this was the open up resources, which I hope you guys have heard about and you've seen. They have been available for beta since 2016, but in, I think 2015, but in 2017 school year, they were the 6 through 8 mathematics courses content has been available for school adoption. And this year, for the upcoming school year for 2018-2019, ELA curriculum for K through 5 is available for adoption. Now, this is what I call full box curriculum. This isn't just a textbook, an open textbook, or some videos or things like that. This is like full curriculum equivalent of what a school district would purchase or adopt for their school. And so right now they have 6 through 8 mathematics, and they also have K through 5 ELA, with more mathematics and ELA to be released as they keep going. So this is really, even if you're not even teaching in these disciplines, going and exploring this curriculum is kind of a fun thing to do, and I would encourage you to do it. And again, this is all under the Open Up resources, and this is what came out of that K-12 OER collaborative. So a really good event. And part of the reason the guy that took over this, that led it, actually left a major publishing company, and that's kind of why it went the direction of building something that looks like what a school district would actually purchase, because he had actually been helping create things that school districts were purchasing. Which finally, rather than all this random repository stuff, which has been difficult to work with in the past. So this brings me to where I fall in this timeline. And I told you that I came into this timeline about 2009. And I'm not important enough to have a slide because I just talk about OER. But where I got first exposed to OER was in 2009. I'm actually the director of technology and OER for Mountain Heights Academy. We are a public online charter school. We're fully online. And our school started back in 2009, and I've been with them since then. I started as a math teacher. That's what my original background is in math and physics. And then I moved into this position at Mountain Heights and immediately realized that no one knew how to run an LMS. I didn't either, but that was fun to figure out. And I pretty much took over all the systems management and moved over to the tech piece. I think probably any person in tech ends up there along this same path. And that's how I got there too. And I kind of got involved in the OER because, again, there was this vacuum of no one who knew anything, and I qualified, but I was willing to learn. When I first heard about this job at Mountain Heights Academy, I learned about it by reading an article about David Wiley, and I was exposed to that term OER in that article, that online article, and so I went into my interview with just that background. And I faked it because that's what you do in interviews. And then I had to learn about what OER was. So David is actually one of the founders of our school. And how my school came to be was that David, obviously I told you, has been involved in OER since 1998, I believe, or at least formally involved in OER since then. And he, back in the early 2000s, one of his doctoral students came up to him and said, David, you're a big talker, and you talk about OER, and you talk about it being important in schools. Why don't you put your money where your mouth is? It's not really money, because it was public money. But why don't you put this into action and actually create something rather than just talking about it? And so he put together a group of people who actually were the founders for my school. My school is the first school in the country. It's the first high school in the world that used OER as the basis, the primary base of his curriculum. And now we are certainly not the only ones. When it comes to OER, you don't want to be the only. You want that to be more and more. And there are more and more schools across this country and across the globe that are using OER as a piece of, or a huge part of their content. And that's very, very exciting. So we have been, for the last 10 years, building and curating and working with and adapting curriculum. And we've gotten pretty skilled at working with OER, but it was not a skill set we started with. I told you, I didn't have it when I started with. I had to learn on my feet. At my school, we are all experienced educators, but most of us, like I said, hadn't even heard of OER prior to 2009. Very few of us in this room would have done that. So I was very far from being a pro, and I found a video a couple years ago that shows how I felt about OER at the time when I first learned about it, and in these first few years of me working with OER. Now, in this video I'm going to show you, I'm the monkey. This is what I represent. I'm the monkey in this video. Are we playing? So that video I thought was perfect because that's exactly how I felt about OER. I had this treasure in my hand. And I went after it, but like in trying to access it, I felt like I was trapped a bit, and even hamstrung. Because at first, back in 2009, there were not enough resources, and then I told you what happened between like 2009 and 2013. Then there were too many, and I didn't know what I was doing, but it was like this, I couldn't let go of it, and it was a challenge for me. I remember feeling very challenged by OER in those initial years. But I don't feel like OER is a monkey trap any longer. And that's really the message I want to get out to you today. And I want to tell you some of the reasons why this is not a monkey trap. It's not just a treasure that is going to suck up your time and your resources, which are limited as educators. But it's something that can be very, very valuable to you. So I have been talking about OER for a long time now. And when I first started talking, well, for the majority of the time, I would talk to people about OER. And I would lead with, I would talk about why you should use OER. I would always lead with the idea of cost. It was my Family Feud answer. Number one answer on the board. I'd say you should use it because it's free. Okay? And what I have learned, okay, that actually is not a good reason. Not for K-12, okay? It is for some things, but not for K-12. I always thought this is a great answer because, why would free not be something that was extremely motivating to budget-conscious schools like we are all working with? But research has come out in the last couple years that has shown that is not true. That is not true. And so being cost is not a why factor for the most part when it comes to OER, with an exception, okay? So let me tell you what the OER Collaborative came up with in a study that they released this last couple years. And they say this: price is not a significant factor in district decision making, with the possible exception of when there is no money available, in which case adoptions are generally suspended altogether. So to put it in terms of the great wordsmith, Kanye, from his song The Good Life, he said it this way. Okay, so essentially what he's saying there is that OER, when it's free, does not make a difference to K-12 school districts when the district has money. And when the district does not have money, they've got way bigger problems, okay, to deal with. And they're not adopting anything or considering curriculum at that point anyway. So free does not matter to K-12. However, where it does still matter, and so I want to make sure you do know it, is when we're talking about post-secondary institutions, because cost does matter. When we talk about OER, you often hear about the $5 textbook, and literally you can print textbooks for when textbooks become just the cost of printing and distribution, they become pricing that's like $5. That makes a difference to college students. My two oldest daughters are in college right now, and I am embarrassed to say that they have both admitted to me that they have not bought a textbook for a class because they didn't want to spend the money. When the money is coming out of their own pocket, then free matters. The thing is, we don't ask our kindergartners to purchase their own textbooks. I hope we don't anywhere in this country, okay? Maybe somewhere. We're not asking our students to take that money out of our pockets, and so that's why the cost doesn't affect us in K-12 like it does in the post-secondary. But I will admit that OER and college students are a match made in heaven. Like when I would I told my daughter, maybe look for the teachers who are offering OER because your textbooks costs are going to be a lot less. And they were, they're very motivated by that. But for us, it doesn't make so much of a difference. So when you take cost out of the equation, why should we use OER? Why should a district consider OER? I have 3 reasons for you. My first one is that it's flexible. There's a term that gets thrown around a lot in education, and it's called RTI, which stands for Whispering, response to intervention, that is exactly what it stands for. Now, that is a special education term, but more broadly, it applies to how we are adapting our curriculum to meet the needs of our students, and then measuring their response or hopefully their gains to these changes that we were making. So we have made, over this last decade or so, some amazing advances in educational technology and delivery, but this movement and this growth in digital resources has very ironically led to the development of this engaging, beautiful, technically savvy digital resources that are essentially static. We are creating static content. Like, that's a step backwards, and it's very weird. Like, you can create this great interactive and no one can do anything with it except use it exactly how you created it. That's strange. I mean, we were doing better back in the mid-1990s where I would have my little worksheet and I could white out something if it didn't work and write a new one in. That's a lot more difficult to do when you're using a digital resource you're putting up on your smartboard. We've almost gone backwards and locked things down even more when it comes to technology. And that is a backwards. So one of the pluses of OER is that it gives you the freedom of teachers to do what you've always done. It gives you to edit and revise and reuse content. That's what allows you to do it without having to worry about copyright issues. My second issue, so it's flexible. My second reason why OER is so valuable to us as educators, okay, has to do with evolution. So I told you before, my original background was as a math teacher. That's where I started. I was a good math teacher. I hope all of you could say in your head right now, if you maybe you never were taught. Most people, no matter where they're in education, taught. I hope you can say to yourself, I was a good teacher. I hope you feel that way about yourself. So I do feel like I was a good math teacher, and I had a lot of success in the classroom. I was particularly successful with maybe the lower end kids. That was kind of my niche, like those Algebra 1 kids. In Utah now we do the integrated math pathway. We're weird. There's only 2 states in the country that do it. But so we don't even teach Algebra 1 anymore. We teach secondary math 1. But back when I was starting teaching, it was still algebra, called algebra at the time. And I had a lot of success in that classroom. But when I left that classroom, when I moved from that school, I left nothing in that classroom behind, okay? When I walked out of that physical classroom, my ideas, the content I built, what I did, it walked out of the classroom with me. Okay? Nothing was left behind from what I did. So what happened to all of the progress that I had made? It just disappeared off into the ether. There was nothing there. For the teacher who walked into that room after me, they got to build their own good Algebra 1 class. But they couldn't benefit from anything that I had done. A fat lot of good, all of my work had done, except for the actual kids I had taught, and that's a good enough reason, for sure. But my role there was limited, and it disappeared as I went out. OER, however, can stop this shameful waste of teachers' efforts, because OER is sticky. It's sticky, okay? OER does not evaporate. And OER does not expire. OER evolves. That is what OER does. It is sticky. That's why I like it. So I'm going to take you back to the 1980s again. We'll come back. We're going to take you back even farther than when I played the Oregon Trail game, because that was when I was at the school that had money to buy Apple IIes. I'm going to take you back to my 3rd grade year where I was at an inner city school in Portland, Oregon, and they did not have money at that school. They did not have money. I had a teacher, her name was Mrs. Green, and Mrs. Green was not a good teacher. And I can say that with all fairness, and I'll tell you why, so you know I'm not being unfair to this lady. This is my memory of Mrs. Green. And by the way, I verified this 2 weeks ago with my sister, because I asked my sister, I'm like, am I remembering this correctly? Because this sounds crazy. And she's like, nope, that was true. So my memory of Mrs. Green is she would stand there in the classroom with a tab in one hand and a cigarette in the other. I am not joking you. This lady was smoking in our classroom. I don't know how we did that. She also, just so you know why I called her a bad teacher, she made a tail, like a donkey tail, And if you were a tattletale, she would pin it to you and you had to wear it for the day. Can you believe that? Like, this was real. And by the way, I wore that tail more than once because I was a strong-willed little girl. But like that stuff would not fly. So I was fair calling Mrs. Green a bad teacher because she was. But besides those reasons, I have a reason why I remember Mrs. Green. It's because she had this butcher paper sign that went across the top of the blackboard that said, "A mind is a terrible thing to waste." And what I want to change that little bit and suggest to you right now and say, a teacher is a terrible thing to waste. A teacher is a terrible thing to waste. A teacher can take an OER course that they have built and adapted and revised and edited, and they can hand it off to another teacher who can then build and revise and edit. And what we have with OER is we have an accumulation of best practices. That is what OER is. We don't waste our teachers. We don't waste you. We don't want that. We can have an evolution of courses, an evolution of content that builds on your expertise, that builds on what you do and what you know, and suddenly that doesn't just disappear out into the ether when you retire, or move schools, or change classes. That is saved. Your work is sticky. My third reason, okay, my final reason, I have other stuff, but this is my final reason why you should use OER, okay? OER is intrinsic to teaching. It's intrinsic. Teachers are hardwired to OER. I'm going to use that as a verb now. OER is a new verb for you. You are hardwired to OER. Let me explain. So my very first teaching job was at East High School in Salt Lake City. You may or may not, depending on the ages of your children, recognize this particular picture. Raise your hand if you recognize what movie this comes from. Okay, so this is from High School Musical. My claim to fame to my children, I have 5 daughters, by the way, 2 that are older that are in college, who were like at the right age when all of this High School Musical came out. So I was like super cool to them because I taught at East and they filmed it there. And then my younger 3 girls are, let's see, when they just watched Greatest Showman. And so then they saw Zac Efron, and like, who doesn't fall in love with Zac Efron because it's Zac Efron? So then I'm like, well, let's go see Zac Efron when he's younger. So then they just recently watched all 3 of the High School Musical videos. So I've got a ton of street cred with the 10-year-olds in my neighborhood because, once again, it's really cool news that I taught at the High School Musical school. So that was my first teaching job, was at East High School. And when I walked into that school for the first time, I was a 21-year-old teacher, and they handed me a box. This was 1995. Back in 1995, like, you literally got a box for math. I know some disciplines, they don't give you a box, but in math, they do. And it literally was a box of stuff, and inside this box of stuff, I had my teacher manual, and I had my little, like, workbooks that I had my overheads, because we still had overheads in 1995. I kind of miss overheads. They were fun. And so I had this box of stuff, and that was all that I had. I mean, I had a couple posters that I made when I was a student teacher, because that's what you do in student teaching, is like make posters for your classroom. But this was the extent of my resources. I had this box that someone handed me, this curriculum, instant math class, there you go. In the 1990s, it was still a physical box. Nowadays, if you're a math teacher, I don't know if the other disciplines, but you do get a box. It's just a digital box where they give you this digital box now of resources. But again, it's just your class in a box. So that box right there was my complete framework as a teacher. It's all I had. And then that started to change, because as I started talking with other teachers at my school, they began sharing things with me. They began sharing their projects, their assessments. We started talking back and forth. You know how it works. And my teacher box turned into my teacher file cabinet. And I did literally still have a file cabinet. I work online now. I don't have an actual file cabinet anymore. I take it back. I do have boxes in my basement because I can't throw away anything. Like, I look back at my stuff. I still have like the tests that I wrote for the first calculus test I wrote. Anyway, I have all that stuff still. What good does it do me? Not good there, for sure. But my box expanded to this file cabinet because of the way that I was interacting with other teachers, the way that I was sharing things. So this process of working with other teachers, them giving you things, you giving things back, this idea is a process you're all familiar with. Every one of us did it. That is all that OER is. This idea of sharing back and forth, that's why I say it's intrinsic to teaching. It's part of your job. It's what you've been doing since the day you walked into the classroom. You have been OERing from the very, very beginning, okay? We are teachers. We naturally and intrinsically, we revise, we remix, we redistribute, okay? We do not believe in disappearing ink. We don't. We teach. We believe in things sticking around. I said sticky. OER is sticky. So altruism is a basic tenet of teaching. And David Wiley explains this. I quote him. I know I spend a lot of time around him, so if you hear me quoting him all the time, it's why. But he explains this about teaching. Education is sharing. Okay, that's the definition. Teachers, we share with our students. We share our knowledge. We share our skills. We share our feedback. We share our criticism. We share our encouragement. And then students, they share back with us, okay? They share their questions. They share their assignments. They share their ideas. They share their assessments. They share their observations. They are sharing back with us. Knowledge is magical. It is one of the few things that can be given away without it being given away. You still have it. And that's why it feels so good to work in education. You are doing magic every single day. The idea that this sharing is intrinsic to what you do, that it's built into your actual job, that's what makes us feel good. Not every job is like that, but every day you are sharing because that is the definition of educating people. So, if there is no sharing, there is no education. Successful educators are the ones who share the most completely with the most students. At the end of your career, that is how you can measure your impact. How have you shared? How many people get to say that? Okay, that's why this job is so cool. Like I said, it makes you feel good. We feel good. It's intrinsic. So, back in 1989, I'm kind of moving around here, there was a sports fantasy film that was released. And if you ever on Netflix, you can like search by genres. The fact that there is a genre called sports fantasy is kind of a funny one. In fact, when I realized this was called a sports fantasy movie, I did a search. I wanted to see if anything else qualified as sports fantasy. And apparently back in 2007, there was a fantasy football movie that was released. I don't think any of you guys saw that one. I didn't. But this movie back in 1989 was a blockbuster. See if you can think in your head, can you think of anything that qualified back as a fantasy sports film? It was this one right here. Maybe that image helps you out. The movie was called Field of Dreams, and it starred Kevin Costner. And the story behind this particular movie is that while he was walking through his cornfields one day, Kevin Costner heard a voice whispering to him, "If you build it, they will come." Okay, so he hears that voice whispering to him, and he is inspired to turn his cornfield into a baseball diamond, and then that field is populated by these guys who start coming out of the field. And I was young when this movie came out, and I remember thinking it was kind of creepy when people came out of the corn, but that's okay. It was a feel-good movie, but I still found this a little bit creepy. So then Shoeless Joe Jackson and other players from the 1919 Black Sox scandal came out, and eventually the movie goes on. Hundreds of people come to watch baseball on this field. And so from this movie, in our pop culture psyche, that phrase, "if you build it, they will come," got burned into our culture. But the problem about that particular statement is that when it comes to education, it's pure bunk. That is not true at all. Merely building something doesn't mean that anyone's going to come use it, okay? Your job as a teacher is not just to, I'm giving you this charge, is not just to know about OER and not just to use OER, but you need to share it back. That is the charge I'm leaving you with today. Don't just be a take. You can. I'm not going to stop you. You can just be a taker of it. You can just be a taker and a user and a consumer. But it's not going to make you feel good because you're all about sharing. I'm encouraging you to share it back. You have to put it into use. You need to share it. If you take the time to edit and build, please share it. And then take the idea. My other challenge to you is, and I'll talk about it a little bit more if you come listen to me about how we've done this with our school, is to bring students into this OER process. Bring them into this sharing process. Make them a part of that. Teach them how to use and revise and edit and share back too. OER is the underpinnings of education. It's what we do as educators, and it's what we've done from the moment you started this job. You and I did not know about OER until 2009, 2015, 2018. I don't know, fill in the blank for whatever year you heard about OER the first time. But the truth is, you have all been OER experts from the moment you stepped in a classroom. And I encourage you and challenge you to embrace that, to be a consumer of OER, to be a sharer of OER, and to talk about it, and to teach your students how this type of content and being able to share can make an impact in the world. Thank you very much.